What do you think about the future of education in Anchorage?
I'm excited about the future of education for ASD. So this upcoming year is probably going to be one of our boldest, most transformative years that we've seen in a really long time. My first year, I had the pleasure of working with our community and our school board to define the big things that we wanted to focus on. Some of them will talk about our school start times, our career academies, our professional learning communities on Mondays, and a few others. And really, we get to really see the rubber hit the ground going into the fall, and these initiatives are each in their own special way aligned to the community's vision, which the school board translated into goals and guardrails, which focus on increasing reading proficiency, increasing math, and also increasing graduation rates, increasing students' preparedness for life. So I think we're on the right track. We certainly have some headwinds when it comes to school funding and policy and that sort of thing, but the things within our locus of control, as a team of 8 on the school board and myself, we're really taking action on the areas that we feel are important levers for increasing student success. So I feel optimistic going into next year now that some balls are in place.
How are the start times helpful? This changing start times?
Sure. So school start times have been talked about for a number of years in the community, and it was only this past year that the school board formally made the decision to change start times. And really, in both situations, whether these start times were talked about in the past or last year, it was around student mental health and research that shows that when high school students start school later, they are set up for more success when it comes to high school. So any sort of change of that magnitude will certainly result in that change management fatigue, for sure. We certainly take that in stride, but school start times really are aligned to the science of adolescent sleep, and we're excited to take on that challenge as a district for our community.
I've heard from some people that they're frustrated with the Monday times being different from the rest of the week. How would you address that to those parents?
So professional learning communities were something that we implemented this past year, and really that was a direct response to our board goals on reading proficiency and math proficiency. Reading proficiency in particular, it's something that we measure at the elementary school level, and something that I realized as superintendent my first year was that our elementary teachers never had the opportunity during the day to work with their colleagues and to look at student data and to plan. They'd have to do that after school or try to fit that into the various other things that they're balancing in their day. So professional learning communities is an hour of sacred time where teachers are expected to work with their colleagues and to really understand what is it going to take to help X specific student reach their goals. And I'm really proud of our teachers and educators. We recently received our MAP growth data from the state, and we saw a 10% increase in reading proficiency for grades K through 1. So I think the impacts of professional learning communities is very promising.
As far as the career track program, do you think that some families should be able to opt out of that?
So the Career Academies is a major initiative of the district. Really, 1, to increase graduation rates was the goal, and 2, to really give students the tools they need to explore career options and also college options. And ultimately, they would be exposed to courses that could result in industry-based credentials and other credentials that could lead to a high-wage job out of high school or after college, depending on what their path is. So I really do feel that while it is a big change, and it may not be for everyone, that it should be for most of us. Let's not forget that most of us end up in the workforce. I have a doctorate and a master's, and once I got those, I became a superintendent. I'm back in the workforce, and some leverage their college degrees to become journalists or engineers or other important roles in society. And that's what the Academies is about, is finding out your post-secondary path, whether that's a career out of the gate, college out of the gate, or for many of our students who are worried about student loans, they may want to work, save up some money, and then fulfill their post-secondary ambitions. So with all that said, a big component of the school board conversation was around what if this isn't for a particular family? And they unanimously passed an amendment that provides an opt-out. So there'll be an alternative for families should they feel that the Career Academy track is not for their student.
Do you have any concerns about those students who do track into that to miss electives?
For students who track into Career Academies?
Who go to it, yeah.
So one of the things that we're considering as a district is if we fully implement career academies, what does it mean for students? And what it means is that students would be expected every year of high school to take on an additional class. Their freshman year, it would be a class dedicated to exploring different career options, different college options, to learn the soft skills needed to be successful, such as showing up to work on time, grit, teamwork, communication, because remember that these ninth grade students are also transitioning to high school. So there are a new set of skills that we want to put in their toolbox. And after ninth grade, they would be expected to take an elective that is grounded in the Career Academy program. So that could be a career pathway course in health services, for example, or engineering, what have you. So because of that extra requirement, what the district is proposing is changing the schedule. There will be no schedule changes this upcoming year, but over the next 6 months, we'll make the case to the school board to invest around $3.5 million to hire additional teachers for our high schools. And that would allow the district to allow students to take 7 classes instead of 6 classes, or take 8 classes instead of 6 classes. So in fact, if we move forward in that direction, students would have more opportunities to take more classes than they've ever taken before, in addition to their Career Academy course. So that would really set us up well along other urban districts that have gone that direction. Full disclosure, I was a high school student that took classes in an 8-period day, and I was able to really benefit from that, because what people don't realize is if we move to an 8-period day, we're proposing that students take 4 classes on Mondays, 4 classes on Tuesdays, and then they would rotate. So for me as a student, I really valued being able to just focus on homework for the 4 periods that I took on Monday instead of all of the classes from that day. And then from the teacher perspective, they really get to lean into their smaller cohort of students on that one day instead of teaching their entire caseload over the course of one day. So there are some benefits to it, but it is a fair discussion as to the value proposition of making the change.
And that would be talked about over the next 60 days?
We'll be talking about it over the next 6 months.
6 months.
This would be a part of the budget development process. It would be an appropriation of around $3.5 million. And again, those funds would specifically fund additional teachers for our high schools. And if we zoom out, you'll notice that ASD hires fewer teachers now than we did 10, 15 years ago. And that's because of stagnant funding. We've had to increase class sizes. So we are truly hopeful that at the state level, there'll be greater investments in education moving forward, especially when it comes to the base student allocation. But we need to make transformational change now that'll set up students to be successful in life and beyond. So I think this is a change that could put us in that direction, in spite of the not trivial, but an investment worth discussion.
And again, where would that money come from, that $3.5 million?
So there are a couple of options. So number one, the district received, for example, a $15 million investment from the Department of Education. So those funds are being used to make the freshman academy experience cost neutral. Something I've shared with the board is that the Department of Education at the federal level has invited the district to apply for a similar grant that would fund the remainder of the career academies. With that said, there is an opportunity for the school board to invest funds from the general fund towards this effort. $3.5 million isn't a large percentage of the budget, but it's not a trivial amount of funds either, which is why I'm sure there'll be ample discussion on both sides of the debate to determine if this is the best place to put our funds, when realistically the district will have to consider scaling back certain programs just because of the deficit that we're headed into. But ultimately, we're an education institution, our dollars and resources are limited, and we will need to make investments towards improving student achievement. We just need to deliberate as a board and myself as to how.
It sounds like that 3.5, that's new money coming in, is that correct?
You're talking
From the
about
federal,
grant?
from the federal government.
The federal
yeah.
government provided $15 million that came into the district last year. We're in year 1 of a 5-year grant, and our intent moving forward is those funds would fund the freshman academy to start creating those smaller learning communities for our students.
Okay. How many teachers is 3.5 million?
It's around 30 teachers.
What would be scaled back?
So that's a conversation at the school board level. So for example, if the district did not receive external funding for a schedule change, we as a school board and myself would need to determine where those funds would come from, whether it's something that we want to scale back or what have you. But that's not a conversation done by any one individual. It's done very carefully, as I'm sure you've covered in the past. These conversations around the budget take for 5+ months. And at least my first 2 years as superintendent, everything's been on the table. We've looked at every single program and activity. We've looked at class sizes. We've looked at fund balance. And we'd go through that same exercise again. And we'd also consider the appropriation of the $3.5 million. But when we zoom out, let's think about what we're doing as an organization. We're focused on reading proficiency, math proficiency, and life readiness. And the academies is laser focused aligned to the board goal on life readiness, both through research studies and through districts that have implemented a similar model. They've seen increases in graduation rates. So there is a case to be made that even if it meant scaling back something else, if it means that more of our students can get their high school diplomas on time and enter the workforce and be productive members of our community, let's have that conversation.
So that for these 8-period days, those would be the same hours, just a different looking day. Like, so it'd still be like, to make a number, 9 to 5 or whatever. Like same school hours.
So the number of time that students or school will remain the same. We're just reconfiguring the schedule. For you, I mentioned 2 models, a 7-period day or an 8-period day, where students would take 4 classes a day. There are a number of different ways that a high school can reconfigure a schedule. So one of the things that we let the school board know is that we would stand up a committee to look further at different schedule options for their consideration, their pros and cons, depending on what type of model you look at.
And for those 7 or 8-period classes, what grades would that be for?
So it would be for all high school students.
All high
they would
school.
take either 7 classes or 8 periods.
And so those discussions, nothing's been suggested so far for scaling back anything?
So again, the budget conversation is a 4 to 5 month long process. We haven't even heard back from the legislature on what our appropriation is for this coming school year. That's set to be decided by the governor later this month. So as soon as we understand what our financial picture is for this upcoming fiscal year, we'll then resume planning for the fiscal year after that, FY26. And that's usually a conversation that happens between August and February.
Okay. I just want to double check this one real quickly as well. It's a $50 million grant from the federal government, and 3.5 of that would be used for these different class schedules, or to hire additional teacher for different class schedules.
So a $15 million grant was received from the Department of Education. That's going to fund our freshman academies. There's another grant that we'll be applying for. And separate from that conversation, the district's ask to the school board would be $3.5 million and approval to adjust our schedule to offer more class periods during the day. So it's undetermined how that $3.5 million will be funded yet. It could be federal dollars, it could be other grants, it could be the general fund. So that will be the puzzle piece that we'll deliberate at the school board over the next 4 to 6 months.
This is a lot of changes coming from this past year and coming into the new year, and then these changes as well seem like a lot. What would you say to parents who feel maybe overwhelmed about all the changes?
So we have an incredible community and we're resilient, and it wasn't too long ago that we were in this precarious school bus shortage, and we got through it. We raised the wages, we made the changes needed to rebound and to be stronger than ever as a district. And looking ahead to next school year, there's a lot of change on the horizon, but it's change that's grounded in improving outcomes for students, giving more course offerings and electives and enrichment activities to our 6th graders, adjusting our start times to the science of adolescent sleep, and investing time into our teachers so they can provide more customized instruction to their students. These are changes that can feel a little daunting, but I think 3-4 years from now, we'll look back and say, hey, this was the turning point when ASD chose to focus its resources and time on the areas that are leading to a better education for my student.